All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming to the book club tonight. Tonight, we're going over chapter 7, 8, and 9 of Profit First. Chapter 7 deals with efficiency. Chapter 8 is about accountability. And chapter 9 is dealing with advanced techniques. As always, feel free to jump into the chat or put any questions, comments, or thoughts into the written chat as well. All right, does anybody have anything they want to start with? I guess we can start with chapter 7, which personally was my favorite chapter of the three. Anybody have any thoughts or anything that kind of jumped out at them? When I kind of look at the overview of chapter 7, it's titled Found Money, and kind of like the theme is efficiency. And of course, we talk a lot about that in the group, so I think it's really relevant. He ties it into profit, as in most people, when they think about profit, they think of raising gross sales or revenue. But he uses this metaphor talking about in Idaho, like how there's an underground reservoir of water, and it's like, I forget the percentage, but it's like 10x or more the water underground than they can get from the rainfall. And that's kind of how we need to think about profit, is to tap into that underground profit. What are those efficiencies that we can come up with that will lead to greater profit? He then talks, he references McDonald's. Well, actually, let me go straight to the book. On page 115 in my book, he says, if you don't have efficiencies in place, because ultimately whatever new client revenue you generate will have corresponding cost, and these are likely to go in check, you must build efficiencies. And then the next section is the subtitle is Why Even Fat Cats Need Efficiencies. And he's talking about like big businesses and the need for efficiency. And he gives these examples of like flat screen TVs. Like when they first came out, they were very expensive. And over time, that competition began to lower the prices. Whereas we know now, flat screens are really cheap compared to where they were 10 years ago or even more. And he's kind of emphasizing this point that competition will squeeze you out of profit. And so I guess maybe my question for y'all, I don't know if anybody thought about this, like, how can we relate that to eBay? Like, most of us aren't building a product, but I think there are parallels there.
I think so too. That's something that I think about just about every single day. More people are going to do this. It's my belief that the economy isn't going to get better before it gets worse. So maybe people aren't going to work, get squeezed out, get laid off. And I think more and more people are going to jump into this with all the other costs that increase. I'm of the firm belief that life is good is always going to be $9.99. So our margins are going to get smaller. And, like this chapter is going to talk about, we have to get more efficient in order to find more profit, I think.
Yeah, I think that's 100% correct. And of course, tech's kind of, you've showed us a lot of efficiency hacks and taught the group how to do it, because if you think about it, there is more competition, and competition tends to drive prices down. And like the advantage that tech has, and he's showing us, is how quickly he can get listings up. So you can afford to take less profit if you kind of have that McDonald's approach, which he does talk about in this chapter, where you're doing more of a volume game. And I think that's like especially if we're going to be in the niche of used clothing, one of the previous books, it was talking about understanding your customer. And we talked about that in a previous book club. The average eBay customer is looking for a good deal. And like Tech said many times, we have lots of competition, and some of these people, maybe they're not even in business. Maybe they're just wanting to sell their stuff instead of doing a garage sale, and they don't mind letting it go really cheap. So we have to become really efficient. And I think that's the important part of, like, when Tech talks about niching down, like you can't. And he also talks about this in this chapter as well. Like he uses his lawn care guy who comes over to his house, and he does his lawn, and I think he charges like $200 for that service. But his lawn care guy, then ask him if he wants to clean his gutters. He's like, sure. But then his lawn guy had to then go get the equipment to do it. So you've got time, you've got the purchase of equipment. And then, of course, while he's cleaning the gutters out, his lawn equipment is not being used, because at that same time, he could be doing more lawns, which he's already efficient at. And then while he's up there doing gutters, he's like, well, I see some damage on the roof. Do you want me to do that? Take care of that? And he's like, sure. And, he's back to Home Depot or wherever and spending more money. And he's not efficient of those. And when I read that part, and I guess it was last night, I was talking to KT. She posted on in our group about this, like how she did a storage unit. And I used to love doing storage units too, because it's kind of like a treasure hunting mentality, and you never know what's going to be in there. There can be some great finds, but it's really hard to turn a storage auction hunting into a business. I think it could be done, but it's way more complicated than just focusing on one niche where you can become really efficient. All right, on page, let's see, where was he talking? He was talking about McDonald's. Yeah, I think this is on page 118 and 119. On the bottom of 118, he says, you want to duplicate your best clients because that means they have a consistent need. And in turn, you want to reduce the variety of things you do to the fewest that will best serve your best client's need. Think McDonald's. That company is a money-making machine because they feed hungry people who don't care, at least in the moment, about their health as much as their hunger. With a few products, fries, hamburgers, and breaded chicken, the fewest things you can do repetitively to serve a consistent core customer need, this spells efficiency. And that was the part I really highlighted. And I know Tech, you've said this a lot of times, like you have 20 or 30 brands that you're constantly selling similar from. And I think that's probably the eBay equivalency of McDonald's. Would you agree with that, Tech, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. McDonald's, they only do a couple things, just like me. I try to do the same thing. When you can keep everything simple, you can go as fast as possible, and I think you can make as much money as possible. Like you said, when the lawn guy has to clean out gutters, the lawnmower isn't working, and the lawnmower is the business. So, just listening to you, I was thinking, sometimes I think crazy, and I go, maybe I get 10 people and we kind of blow this whole thing up. But when you made the example of the lawnmower not working, I really don't need any extra space to double capacity, because while the people are listing, I can have the photographers using the photo station, and then they flip flop. Because if the photo station isn't working, I'm not making any money. If the computer station isn't working, I'm not making any money. So just with the same amount of setups that I have now, 3, I could essentially have 6 people working in the same exact setup, because one of them is always not in motion at any particular time. So it's just things like that we all have to think about, where, we can, increase capacity if that's what we want to do, but it's very difficult to increase the capacity when you're making chicken sandwiches and changing tires too. It's all got to be the same thing. It's all got to be very simple. And I think that if we can keep it as simple as possible, it's easy to scale and it's easy to do it faster. And, you know, the more listings we can get up, the more money we're ultimately going to make.
Yeah, that's good. Well said. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, thinking about how your different stations and relating that to what he was talking about, like unused equipment is not very efficient. So if you could, like you said, flip flop it or swing it around where each station is constantly being used, that's obviously more efficient than not.
Right, because
And
I could have 6 people in the same exact setup I have right now. Just while they're doing pictures, the other group is on the computer. They should finish around the same amount of time, and then they just change places.
so the group that was listing then would move to the photography stations, and then they would start photographing the next batch of clothing, while that previous group is then listing, and that would just be a continuous cycle then, right?
Yeah, and it wouldn't even be about you know, number per day. It would just be about the day. Because if you had to wait for each group to get to 300, maybe there'll be a little bit of overlap and people are standing there. But when one person is done with the computer, they get on the pictures, that picture person goes on the computer, and it'll just go in a big circle. Whenever the computer's done, picture person gets back on it.
Yeah, I like that. I think there's definitely something there, which kind of relates to the next big point on page 119 that the author talks about. He has this formula. Let me see. He says, I want you to set a massive goal for yourself, look at every aspect of your business, and determine how to get 2 times the results with half the effort. That's a biggie. So I will say it again. How do you get 2 times the results with half the effort? And then later down, he says, to double the results with half the effort is a big goal that forces big thinking, and it brings about small and big progress, all of which goes to the bottom line. And I know in the morning call, like I mentioned it this morning, I forget who brought this up, but they brought up the idea of the wristband for your phone. And so I ordered one and actually used it this morning for the first time, because when I go to the storage units to pull inventory, it's dark. So I have my headlamp on. But what I had been doing is I have a table and I have my phone open to the eBay page. And like I would look at my number, my SKU number, then I would go pick it, bring it to the bin, then have to go back to the next one. And that wasn't very efficient. So now with that wristband with my phone, I can just go and order like what Chris was talking about this morning, and just picking those items without having to go back to the table so often. And sometimes, to be honest, like I've got like sports talk on in the morning, so I'm listening to the Cowboys or Mavericks or whatever they're talking about. They're talking about the Cowboys loss this morning. Ouch. But anyway, and sometimes they're talking statistics and whatnot, and my mind will drift a little bit, which is dangerous. And then I'll forget, oh, like, wait, was that, 548 or was that 458? But with a on your wrist, it's right there. I can just instantly look at it if I do forget it. So I think that would be like a small efficiency example. And I think what Tech is talking about, like that's obviously a big efficiency producer. And he's saying that's, both are important. And that's what I was trying to tell Chris this morning. And I think that's what that's where our minds need to be, is looking for those efficiencies, whether it's big or small, because they all kind of create a compound effect. And then the next section, he talks about UPS. And I talked about that this morning too. And I know somebody in the call said that their husband works for UPS and they didn't necessarily use all of these strategies. And, obviously I don't know how UPS rolls those out, but he did give 3 examples of how UPS works on becoming more efficient. And one was the pinky ring. Like before the pinky ring, they used to, like most of us, we put our keys in our pocket. But, at each stop, UPS turns their truck off. And so once you go back to the truck, have to pull out the keys, in the ignition. You don't think much of it, but by switching that key to a wrist, or they said a pinky ring, that's just a flick of the wrist. So that's going to save you 5 to 10 seconds per stop. And then if you compound that by the number of stops each driver makes throughout the day, and then multiply that by thousands of stops, I mean, that's a massive amount of time that could be saved. And those are the type of efficiencies they're talking about. And then he also talks about how they don't allow left-hand turns because left-hand turns take longer. He didn't mention they're more dangerous, but they are also more dangerous. So they probably lead to more accidents when you're making a left turn. So they now only want their drivers to make right turns. And then the last point he brought up about UPS was how they switch from going from daily vehicle washings to every other day. That saves them money, saves energy usage, and saves time. So those are just 3 little examples how one company has become more efficient. The next subsection is talking about firing bad clients. Now, of course, oh yes, Vanessa.
I don't know if we're jumping into discussion yet, but on the so we can come back to it later if not, but I was wondering if on kind of like the efficiencies and time saving section that you just talked about, I know he gave a lot of examples, but I also wondered if he gave like almost like labeling different time saving or like time management strategies. I don't know, rather than like trying to look at all of our processes and kind of go like, oh, where can I find like a little secret like trick thing that I can do? Like I know when we talk about in the group is about like removing steps. Like if you can remove a step, that's always going to save you time. Or like when I saw someone comment in the group this week was about I guess it's like saving, or I guess it's like eliminating steps too, is like never go anywhere without carrying something. Like if you're going to go outside your car, like take the trash or something like that. Like I wonder if we can kind of like categorize the steps a little bit to kind of help us think about, where those might fall in our own processes.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think he does. I didn't see anywhere where he explicitly categorized. Now he did mention another book he had called The Pumpkin Plan, which apparently, well, matter of fact, I highlighted it. So it's secretly a book about efficiency. So that might be a good read, and I'm sure he's going to dig into efficiencies a lot deeper in that book. I don't know what y'all think. Just on the surface, thinking about that question, it's like, well, what are the different parts of our business? Like Chris is always talking about our schedule and in different parts of the day. Like, there's inventory, there's pulling orders, there's customer service, shipping, obviously listing, photography, all these different parts. What do y'all think as far as categorizing that? As far as resellers, would it just be categorized by like when we talk about the one thing, the book we read, it's like at that moment, like we have to do a lot of different things throughout the day, but our challenge is at each different part of the day or each part of the routine that we really have to focus on that one thing, and it's easy to get distracted. Does anyone have any thoughts on Vanessa's question?
I mean, reselling is just 3 parts, right? It's listing, shipping, and sourcing. So we just have to figure out how to do those parts faster. There's really not, like it's just how do we do these 3 things faster? And like unfortunately, it's too niche for anyone to help us other than us, really. Like, like Tech's idea of having multiple workers working, with the same station, that doesn't apply to any of us. We don't have the type of scaling that he's working with that would even matter to any of us at this point. But you can tell what he means by that, so we got to find that kind of time in our own systems and figure out a way to use it.
Yeah, all right. So think about what Tech is kicking around in his head, but maybe when you get to the point where you hire your first employee, or let's just say you hire a lister. Now, if you hire somebody to do shipping, it's gonna be different. But if you hire a photographer / lister, then you could work that. Like, you could be one part of the puzzle after they're trained. They're taking photographs, you're listing photographs you did maybe previously, and then you rotate. So in that way, you would basically be 2xing your productivity with half the resources. And earlier in the book, that was a big emphasis too about being lean. And I know Tech talked a lot about this, about lean growth. And I think that also checks that mark.
Yeah, that's what we're currently doing, where like Eric will do his photos in the morning and then he'll list while I do my photos in the evening. So we just have one station, but that works out.
Ken, let me ask you a question. You look familiar. Were you interviewed by Renzi about shoes recently?
Yeah, probably
Okay.
a couple months
All right.
ago.
Yeah. I was like, I know he looks familiar. I recognize the face. All right. Yeah, that is definitely a good example of that. And Heidi in the chat, she said, I set up a Rollo today for the first time. No needing to cut out labels and hand tape, make me more efficient. Yeah, I second. I'm also Team Rollo, and I made that switch, I don't know, about a year ago, about the time I joined the group, and it's definitely saved me so much time, because I was very inefficient. Like, I'm in the garage and my laser printer is in the study, so I'd have to print the label, walk through the door, go in there and get it. Very inefficient. Then I'd have to cut out the label and tape it. And when I switched to the Rollo, I was like, oh my goodness. And the Rollo's right here beside me, and never had any technical problems. It prints right away. And I did put a post in the group. I was just curious what other people, and I think that's what Vanessa was referencing. Somebody did mention always have something in your hand when, like, if you're going somewhere. And I think a Rollo is definitely way more efficient than the laser jet, especially if it's in a different room.
Brian, I think like anytime like you can, because I think a lot of people start off with a lot of things in a lot of different rooms because you don't have like a dedicated space. But I think that dedicated space is like a total game changer in terms of time efficiency, just not like walking from room to room, not having things like organized, like, exactly where they are, right? Because you're always just kind of like working around your own life. Yeah, and then I actually think it may help to like kind of have a dedicated space, but a smaller space, because just like when you have less time, it seems like sometimes you can be more productive. Like when you have a smaller space, like it kind of forces you to stay organized, because like you have to be like just to even walk around in there, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess when you think about it, like going back to McDonald's, like the kitchens in these fast food restaurants aren't that large, so it's a relatively tight space, but they're getting a whole lot of work done back there. And I think that'd be interesting, like to go to Hamburger, like they talk about Hamburger University, and just kind of really see how, because there's obviously a lot of planning that goes in as far as the flow, the workflow at the back of that kitchen. And I think there are some parallels between reselling. Like I think about my workflow, and I know I could improve it, but I currently don't have the room to make the changes I want to. But But going back to the backlots, and yeah, Vanessa, thanks for that. And I'll just jump right in because, you know, if nobody has a question or comment, I'm just kind of going over what I have on here, and I'd much rather hear from you guys, your thoughts versus me just kind of rambling on. So feel free to jump right in there. Justin said, listing at a desk instead of the couch. I can get way more done when I'm at a desk with no distractions like family, TV constantly interrupting me. I took a step further and made the entire downstairs our business work area. Yeah, that's big time. Yeah, because if you think about it, a couch, like usually in front of a couch, you're going to have a TV. And gosh, all these books begin to kind of melt together. I guess it was Atomic Habits, where he's talking about creating an environment or having an environment that will support your habits. And like I always come back to the running example of, you know, maybe having your running shoes set out, your clothes set out. So right when you walk in the door, like if you're coming home from work, it's right there. Because if you sit on the couch is an environment of relaxation and, you know, and watching TV or just taking it easy. So by switching from the couch to a desk or even a dedicated area like that, you would probably be way more productive. How long have you made that switch, Justin? And have you noticed a big time increase in productivity? About 2 months now. And like for me, like I have storage units where my inventory is, and I have some inventory here, and also to my left I have my my listing area, and then I list where I'm sitting at. And when I went full time, it kind of took a while for my family for me to kind of set the expectation and the boundaries that this is a work area. And of course, if something's really important, like my wife just came in, because you know my daughter has some friends over, and she might have needed something, but they're kind of trained to know that if I'm in here, unless it's something really important, that I'm working. And Justin said, yeah, he finishes sooner, but also made other improvements. And I think that talking about other improvements, and that just kind of reinforces the point we were talking about, how it's big improvements, like maybe moving to a downstairs area. That's a big improvement. You know, how would you classify switching from a laser printer to a Rollo? Is that a big, is that a small, maybe a medium improvement? I know another big change that I made at the beginning of the year. I had, well, before I made the switch, I was doing line by line entry, which, you know, Chris has talked about that and Tech's talked about it. It is good to know your numbers. It's also very time consuming. And, you know, once you start listing and selling a decent amount, like I was spending way too much time keeping up with a line by line accounting. So when I switched to the GoDaddy bookkeeping, which is pretty much automated, and you know, once you set it up, a lot of your transactions auto classify. And now instead of spending maybe an hour a day doing line by line accounting, maybe I spend 30 minutes a week just to go in and make sure everything's right, or there wasn't anything that slipped through the cracks. And that was a big efficiency hack for me. So if anybody else has any efficiency hacks, especially since that's what we're talking about, or changes you've made, feel free to jump in and tell us about them. I think that could be helpful. Vanessa?
Two things I was thinking about. So one, for sourcing, I created, you know, I kind of had like, used to have kind of like a mental map in my mind of some routes that I would go on. But even each time when I was going somewhere, I'd have to like type in the store right before I left the last one. I was living at a thrift store. And so I created on Google Maps, you can create like a saved map route with like all the addresses, and it'll just list it like A, B, C, D. And so like when you leave the store, you get in your car, you can just click to the next one and hit go for directions, and it'll just, you know, start taking you there. So that was a big one for me because I didn't have to like it was less decision making and less thinking. Less like, okay, which store is it again? Like, what street is it on? And then another one I was thinking about was like when you're doing repetitive tasks, like maybe like taking photos, as long as you're doing like the same type of items all the time, or when you're doing your listing, if you can kind of like standardize like the order that you're doing those in. So you really get into, like you just mentioned earlier, like flow. You can really get into that flow. It becomes like muscle memory, and you kind of get that, like Tech talks about, where you can kind of just turn your brain off thing. Like that's super helpful. Like I found doing things in the exact same order. Like you can even start by just like making lists. So I like kind of like Chris has, I think he has like a photography, you know, the order that he takes the photos in. So maybe the front, then the collar, then the tag, or what, however. And then even jumping like through the listing, I kind of have an order of where I like to start with and how I like to like move through the listing. So that those are a couple things that have helped me.
Those are great examples. Yeah, I know Chris was talking about when he was talking about hiring someone, even on the help wanted page, or whatever you want to call it, that he actually had pictures of kind of like the order, and somebody was actually asking for a copy. And I really like that Google Maps idea. I've done something similar. I think I use MapQuest. I have a route planner, and like in my area, there's so many Goodwills, and I've used that a few times to plan my routes, so I don't have to like exactly like what you were saying, Vanessa. And that's definitely a big time saver. Those are good.
I'll tell you guys how we figured out a good sourcing route. Essentially, is because we live in an area with a lot of like thrift stores and stuff, but they're not all like good, right? So for the first 6 weeks, we just went to all of them, and every store we went to, we just wrote down how many items we got, and then every week, if the thrift store was terrible, we just started eliminating them. By the end of 6 weeks, we had a route that was, producing 100 items to, 150 items. So it's a very easy way to do it.
Yeah, that's a really good idea to keep notes. I've done something similar. Like I would print out a hard copy of the route, and just like kind of what Kim was saying, I would just make a note. And some of them I'd be like, don't go to this place, like this Goodwill, they're charging above. Like in Dallas, I think for shoes it's $6.99 a pair, no, $7.99 a pair, and then, or maybe I got backwards. And in Fort Worth it's $6.99 or $7.99. But you'll go to certain Goodwills and like they mark up almost everything. They kind of lost their mind. So I would just make a notation like this is a bad spot or bad sourcing stop. Layla.
Hi. So I just wanted to share a change that I made that also made me more efficient, like you were asking. So it is something that we have been talking about. I don't know if it even makes sense that I say it here, but niching down. So I was selling high ASP items like shoes, jackets, especially for this winter time. And it was good, but then I was having a hard time scaling. Like you said, you had to go back to mainly clothes. Remember, you did tell me that. So I found a new source a few weeks ago where I can buy in bulk. So I'm buying like bales from him. And like everybody here knows, when you buy a bale, you cannot have only like high ASP items. I did find a Burberry shirt in there and a Balmain Paris, but the rest is like, like mall brands like J. Crew, Mirona, and things like that. So my ASP is going to drastically drop, but then I found myself listing so much faster. I went from 10 to 20 in like it was hard for me listing 10 every day because I had to look up every single item. I had to look up, oh, this jacket, what's the name of it? How much does it sell for? Oh, these shoes, how much do they sell for? But then, I mean, there is only so much research you can do on a J. Crew shirt. You know, there's only so much research you can do on a Merona, you know, long sleeve J. Crew shirt. So I was amazed, and I just wanted to share it here. And I even started drafting. Like I was saying, it was hard for me to list 10 every day, but now I'm listing 20 easily and drafting every day. So that made me, you know, I'm happy. I'm really happy about that. So niching down is really helpful.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, niching down and just selling the same X amount of brands. I know I have a source where I primarily get like Levi's jeans and like pearl snap Western shirts from this guy. And whenever I buy them, it's so easy because maybe I just have 100 pearl snap shirts and I don't have to think about it. Like I know I only have to change a couple words and I know the pricing, and kind of the same thing with the Levi's jeans. So I think that's a great tip, Layla. Sally? You're muted.
Well, now, Brian, I have a question for you guys, separate from what I wanted to say. When you're listing those Western shirts, do you make a point to do them all at once? Like, do you have a whole stack of what you have available, or does that help you to list faster, or do you just take whatever you've got off the pile?
Well, when it depends. Like I get some of those Western shirts pretty much wherever I source, but if I source from this one particular guy, it's probably 75 to 80% of the men's shirts I'm going to get are going to be pearl snap. So I just kind of take them as they come, but most of them are pearl snap. And I think once you list so many, it's exactly like what Tech has said a lot of times. Like I know a basic pattern I'm going to list at, $24.99 or $29.99. And I'm a price bucket and take offers to a certain amount. But if I get a style or a pattern or a specific brand that I think Tech would say just looks cooler or is more unique or kind of louder with the Western shirts, like I know that one's going to be more valuable. And those I might take a couple of minutes to look at the very highest ones to make sure that I'm not missing out on not all the money, but that I price it accordingly. But for the most part, it's just as they come, because I think I would probably take more time to sort and organize them than it would save me from listing them time over time.
Well, the other point is, I don't know if Ken keeps a clean work area or not. He was talking about his work area, but all the years I taught, and it was only first, second, and third graders, whenever we stopped an activity, we cleared our desk before we went to the next one. And lots of teachers don't do that. They let kids keep all kinds of junk on top of their desks. And I just found over time that the clearing of the desk, getting something else out. Now, I'm not saying we should clear our desk when we're listing. I'm just saying a really clean area makes it easier to focus. There's not also, when I'm working at my kitchen table, there's nothing on there except what I'm working on, because I am easily distracted like everybody else. And so I take a hard look at a person's area. Is it organized? Not just organized, but do you have too much stuff in that area? Somebody just posted last week some new setup, and they had all their stickers that they were using on some kind of rolling deal. And I thought, oh, she's so smart. I don't even know who it was. Okay.
So
that's really it.
No, that's good. So in a way, you were training them to reset to zero between activities.
Absolutely. And they had a couple of minutes to kind of go, and everybody kind of talks to each other a little bit, all that good stuff too.
Definitely. I like that. Vanessa?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think kind of like what Sally was mentioning earlier, is kind of like batching versus sell similar. So
Mhm.
I think a lot of people that sell in multiple categories are kind of like, we call everything sellers, like to batch because it can be so difficult to switch from, we always give an example, like a toaster to a shirt to a pair of shoes to a skateboard or whatever. But like once you start niching down into one category or just a few, it does become easier to just do the sell similar off your own items, and a lot faster to just do the sell similar off your own items. Especially once you start building up your store, building up your solds, because then you have more of kind of like an index almost to pull from, and those are going to be good templates sort of to work off of because you created them, and you're not selling similar off of somebody else's messed up listing that doesn't have correct item specifics, etc. So
No, that's a good point. And yeah, thinking about it from that point of view, I do batch. Like I have a dedicated area for shoes and for hats, and I guess small items, but it's mostly just shoes and hats. And so usually I'll start my listing day with, I'll pull like 3 pairs of shoes and 2 or 3 hats, and I'll do that real quick. And then I'll put them in a bucket. Then I'll move over to the clothing. And I do have 2 stacks of clothing. I have basically tops and bottoms because with my standing photo booth, kind of like the one Chris used to have, it's 2 different hangers. So I will do, I'll do say 20 shirts, and then I'll move over and then I'll do 20 jeans or shorts. And then whatever I have photographed, then I'll upload it to the computer and start listing. But yeah, I definitely think it makes sense to batch list. And I think it's probably more to do with your listing area, like kind of like what Vanessa was saying. If you're listing a whole bunch of different hard goods and different items, what type of dedicated work area are you taking those in? Like if like I went garage selling a couple of weeks ago, and squirrel brain got me for a second. Like I found this vintage railroad train set, and I couldn't help myself. It was $10 and comps were like 100, and I bought it. And then I brought it home. I'm like, I don't want to list this, and I sure don't want to inventory it, and I sure the heck don't want to ship it. So what I told the girls, I'm like, all right, when we put up the Christmas tree, we're going to build this, and we're just going to keep the train track. It'll be a fun family activity. But the squirrel brain, it's interesting. It still gets me every once in a while, but like then I thought about it, I was like, that sounds horrible to list. And that used to be my whole model, is like when I did storage units, I might get a train like that and a toaster, some electronics I would have to test, pair of shoes. And it's no wonder I was so mentally tired trying to list that, because you have to research it. And some things I would have to photograph outside, and trying to find spots to photograph, it's really not efficient at all. But and here's a question, and because I can't remember the YouTuber, but Chris interviewed this guy a while back, a couple of years ago, and basically he's created a business, I think kind of like what Frank had, where he does a lot of auctions, and he has a very big business. But I think if you were going to try to do auctions and storage units, and you were going to, I guess the question is like how would you do that as efficiently as possible? And the only thing I can think of is you would have to have a lot of help, maybe train people.
You would need a physical store. That's the only way. Like you'd have to pick your categories that you want to put on eBay. The rest just has to be, got rid of.
Yeah, I think you would need a big warehouse and or store. Maybe kind of like Craigslist Hunter, if y'all have seen him on YouTube. That he's kind of like everything. I don't know, but don't want to go down that path. But just kind of interesting. Like, how would you set that up to be as efficient as possible? Because obviously there's money out there, but you'd have to take something that's very scattered, and how could you make that efficient? the next little section, he talks about cloning your best clients and selling smart. And when I was thinking about it, like my brother-in-law, he owns a pool company, and they do Christmas lights. They do a couple of things, and they service pools, which makes sense if you're building pools and servicing those pools. Those kind of go hand in hand. And I know I was talking to him the other night, and we were talking about this and how certain customers for him are just a pain in the butt, and they're trying to nickel and dime him on problems with the contract. And he was telling me basically, and I hadn't read this part when he told me that he was basically wanting to clone his best clients, those a certain demographic of clients where his profit margins are higher and they're less difficult to work with. And I think kind of like what Ken was talking about, like as far as reselling, we can't necessarily control our clients, other than maybe by what we sell, we're kind of focusing on a specific type of customer. Like I think Tech, with the brands that he sells, like he gets a lot of repeat customers. So I don't know if anybody's thought about that. Like, what would that look like, and how does that kind of play in with eBay wanting to us to promote our stores and get repeat customers?
I think that the example that you gave about, problematic customers that are on the route, I do that, every 2 years or so, try to get the average price per yard up. So I kind of fire the cheap ones, especially the cheaper ones that are problematic, in favor of keeping the expensive ones that never complain or say anything. And I think that, and it was funny you talked about Christmas lights. We did that for one season. We have all the machines, we have the bucket trucks, we have everything. Total disaster, because we're not professional Christmas light guys. So we did it for one time only, and we were out. But I think that we can also pick our customers on eBay as well, because we all have the option to sell in very high fraud categories, but a lot of us choose not to. So if we were selling brand new iPhones, you get a couple of those returns back to back, and you had a horrible day. Or you get a switcheroo, or something happens. But for me, I like to sell common items, everyday value items. I'm not selling Gucci that could be a switcheroo, that can be someone wears it out for the whole weekend and sends it back on Monday. So I think a lot of the category and exactly what we sell is going to dictate a lot about the problematic customers as well too.
That's a really good point. Yeah, and it's funny, Tech, that you mentioned about the Christmas lights, because my brother-in-law, like he doesn't do online selling, but kind of like your other businesses, he reminds me of you in a way, because he started 10 15 years ago, and he started with gutters, and he learned how to do gutters on houses. And then from there he started to do roofs. And whenever a storm would come, tornadoes were here in the Texas area, he'd hit the neighborhoods and make really good money putting new roofs on. And it just kind of evolved, like one business kind of led to the next, and then they started doing like fences and outdoor stuff and remodeling, and his latest thing is pools. And the margins on pools, like kind of each new business that he started or evolved to, like the margins were getting better. And he did say, like last weekend they were putting up Christmas lights, and like how you said it was a disaster. He said he saw a different Christmas light company, and in the time it took them to put up one lights on one house, like they did basically 3 in the neighborhood. And that, but the difference was for him is because they've done roofing before. He knows a lot of roofers, so he was able to pull some of those guys instead of doing roofing, that they can put up Christmas lights, because they're really agile on the roofs and they're not scared. And the other company was having to move ladders and didn't really want to get on the roof. So I think kind of going back to the beginning of the chapter, it's almost like you got to kind of think about, you know, I don't want to say your expertise, but like your tools and and how efficient you can become. And kind of the last point of this chapter, he kind of ends it where he and I've heard about this guy, the guy at the flea market who found a frame in a picture frame at the flea market. He found a signed copy of the Declaration of Independence, which was worth like, I think, $2.4 million at auction. And he kind of implied that that's kind of like treasure hunting, which, you know, it's great, but what are the odds of finding that? And then he gives an example, like if this guy, if his business model was to find, you know, valuable antiques, documents, things of that nature, then if he was going to be efficient, then he would need to analyze, like, where were these documents, you know, where did they originate from? And then he would want to focus in that area, and also see, are there certain types of frames that are more likely to have it, to basically develop these efficiencies where, like if Ken goes in and he's looking for shoes, like Ken is not looking at, I mean, I don't know, but I'm assuming, I just saw the interview, so what I've heard, I know you do little jeans, but like, I don't think Ken's going into the women's dresses and things. He's going and he's looking at shoes and maybe jeans, right? And he's really efficient because you've narrowed down what you're looking for.
Yeah, like I
And
don't even see the rest of the store. I'm in and out in 10-20 minutes at the most, you know. Like generalists will spend hours in a store. I'm just like, why? Like, what are you doing?
exactly, yeah. Yeah, when I was doing shoes, or if I go on a shoe sourcing day, I'm the exact same way. On those days, exactly what you do, I'm just looking at shoes and men's jeans, because they're relatively small sections, and once you've sold X amount, you know exactly what to look for. And like what Ken is talking, by being in and out, you're then able to hit more stores. And then if you couple that with, like what Vanessa was saying, with Google Maps or a route planner, well, then you're able to really maximize how many stores you can hit in a day. Like the last time I spent a full day sourcing shoes, like I had the back of the Prius just loaded because I don't know, I hit so many stores. But like what Ken was saying, but if you're a generalist and you're looking at toasters, and then you're gonna go look at blankets and electronics, and maybe go look at books, and you're gonna spend a lot of time in that store. You're probably gonna have to look a lot of things up,
Well, yeah,
because
that's the other thing, right? Like, how much stuff do you actually look up in a store anymore? Like, if I'm looking something up, it's interesting, right? Like, I don't look up boring stuff anymore.
exactly, yeah.
And probably if
developing
Ken's
that
looking it up because it's interesting, it's probably going to be a buy because it's something that he's never seen before.
Yeah,
and it's probably
exactly.
going to be worth good money.
Yeah, those are all good points, and that just kind of highlights the whole, you know, focus of that chapter, which is about efficiency. All right, anybody else have anything else on efficiency or that chapter? I liked all the ideas you guys threw out there.
I
And-
wanted to add, sorry, Brian.
oh, go ahead.
I wanted to add like something I've only been doing it probably, this is like the third week, but like I used to do all my listing like after I got off my day job, and what I started doing was just getting up like a little earlier, and I'll do it basically before work, and having that like a hard stop of like, you know, time to leave for work, and there's some like accountability there. There's gonna be people at work waiting for me. That's been a big like game changer. But like I think we talk about it like in other calls and stuff too. Like, you know, if you have 2 hours or whatever, like you're gonna take 2 hours. But if you can kind of create something where you do have like a shorter time frame, you can really like get a lot done in a short amount of time.
Yeah, and it creates a sense of urgency as well. Like, you know, you've only got X amount of time, so, you know, I forget the law, but basically if you don't have any parameters, and I know Tech's kind of references that, you know, before you know it, you're just kind of screwing around, and it might be listing at 9, 10, 11 p.m. and still not finished.
I believe it's called Parkinson's law.
Parkinson's law. Thank you. That sounds right. Yeah, Parkinson's law, and then what is it? Pareto's law, the Italian farmer, the 80-20 rule. All right, and I think that's a perfect segue into the next chapter, which is sticking with it. And this is all about accountability groups, and I think, Carlin, you've mentioned previously, like I think, did you say you were a member of some of these groups, or you have been in the past?
Not accountability groups, but I have friends that I've kind of had accountability things with, but yeah, I mean, I am in other Facebook groups, but honestly, I stopped reading them because I don't want to talk bad. Like, I'm just talking in a general sense. I'm not talking about anyone in specific, but like pretty much whenever I would go in there, it would be like people complaining about how like they don't have any sales, and like, does anyone else not have sales? And I'm sure we've all, yeah, Kev's nodding his head, but like the one lady, like I told her, like, you don't have good stuff in your closet. Like, it wasn't brands or styles or anything. It was really old stuff. And I was like, you know, I was trying to be nice about it. I wasn't like, you know, like, but she genuinely asked, she was like, and I don't give like unsolicited advice. She's like, I need help with my, you know, with my closet. And, you know, what do you think? And I said to her nicely, I said, like, this is not desirable stuff. And this is why you can't, you know, this is why you're not having sales. And I even told her, like, I used to go to the bins and just pick up whatever random stuff I could find that I thought, you know, would sell. And that just, it doesn't work like that, because you have to go based on what people are searching for, whether it's keywords or brands or sizes, styles, whatever. And yeah, and then like I went on there like a week or two later, and she was still complaining why she had no sales. And I was just like, I don't know, like this group like is just totally different, because everybody's like so positive and we're all just cheering each other on. And if there's no like, you know, if someone lists 30 a day, there's, you know, there's no one's like saying, oh, well, you only list 5 a day. Like that's nothing, you know, like everyone's just so nice.
Yeah, and I think we've talked a lot, or a lot of different people have talked about. I'm the same way. I'm no longer in any of those other groups, because number one, the content, like, it's all here. The information is coming from Tech is top notch, and number two is just the bad attitudes in the other groups.
Well, the thing is, for me, like Poshmark launched in Canada at the end of May 2019, so it's been 2.5 years. And like I started on eBay, and then I went to Poshmark, and then I just never really got eBay off the ground. So when I decided, okay, I'm really going to focus on eBay, because Poshmark, the whole sharing thing, just, that was the one thing that Chris kept talking about, that he was like, you know, you can't, if you get up to like 10,000 listings or something, like even if you have a bot that's sharing for you, you cannot share 10,000 listings a day, multiple times a day, because first of all, you're going to get banned. And then second of all, even the bot, like I calculated it, and it would have to basically be going 24/7 for it to work. So I was like, okay, well, if I want to scale, like I need to get on eBay. And then I just didn't really, I knew like the general sense of eBay and how to list on eBay, but like the nitty gritty that we go through in the group is like exactly what I needed, because like I've learned so much, like just how to do eBay, how to list on eBay, what eBay buyers are looking for. And sorry, my kitten's destroying a bag right now.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, the problem is it takes a while to figure out who actually knows the actual information, and like we don't know, like I've been in a few of those groups, and I'm just like, I'm already better than these guys. Like what's going on here, you know? Like I was asking questions, they just didn't know answers, like they didn't know what the answers were. So it's like, it's not helping me in any way, not even in the sense of like, I just don't know. Anyway, in this group, at least I can ask questions and, people kind of, everyone's at different stages, which is good because we're all just starting at different points, which is fun.
Yeah, and like for me, lost my train of thought. Because of having, health issues, chronic pain, whatever, I've taken like a month off and then I've gotten back into it. I've taken, 2 weeks off and I've gotten back into it. And every single time it's like I've, not purposely, but just through being on and off, have experimented, and like every single time I list, I get sales. I don't list, I don't get sales. Like it's literally that simple. And it's just like, unless it's like a certain time of year where it's like, okay, like the last week of August in Poshmark Canada, I had no sales for 5 days straight, which is just like unheard of for me. But like that's when everyone's getting their kids ready to go back to school. They're enjoying the last week of, summer basically. And like it makes sense that you wouldn't have sales that week. But otherwise, like I had good sales November, December, January, like when people say it's slower because of, if you're selling pre-owned clothing. But I mean, as long as I'm listing, within like 2 days of listing, I sold through like the last week or so, like 25 items because I was listing. And well, I didn't list this week, or last week, but the week before and the week before that, I listed almost 120 items. So, I mean, my Poshmark closet was just like sale, 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 sale. And then I send offers and I get tons of sales that way. So it's just to sit there and complain like, oh, I don't have sales. Like it's very rare that I'll actually like say that to anyone now because I know why I don't have sales. I didn't list. Like it's
Yeah,
I don't know. It's funny how people would rather like do a million different things and like than list. Like they'd rather, and I was one of them too. Like I had a big death pile and I would just go thrifting instead of listing. And then I would be like, why do I have no money? And why do I have no, why do I have no sales? It's like, well, because I went thrifting when I should have been listing. And I think if you don't have the accountability, like it's just really hard to do it for yourself because like, unless you have text motivation every single day, it's just really hard to and like me, I don't rely on this income for my bills. So like if I did, that probably would motivate me a lot more. But like there's no consequence if I don't list. Nobody's gonna like come and yell at me or fire me or anything. So it's just for me some days like I'm not gonna lie, I just don't do it. But I'm trying to at least do something every single day and just to keep the momentum because I find like if you miss one day, it's easy to miss two, and then you miss a week, and then you miss 2 weeks, and it just spirals like so fast. But
yeah, I think a lot of this is just a habit, and I don't know if you read Atomic Habits.
I did, yeah.
And it's like over time that habit just gets stronger and stronger. It doesn't mean you can't mess up, but I think it's important to start small, like Tech's always talking about slow grow, and that's kind of the model I'm on. And I didn't hit my goals last week because I didn't get my full amount of listings for Saturday. So I'm repeating the same number this week, and I'm going to try to hit it. And to be honest, I'm aware it's going to be hard because today I had a lot of orders to ship out, which obviously is a good thing. And so I was only able to get my 28 listings up, and I've got family coming into town Thursday and Friday, and this is my kids who I haven't seen in a while, so it's gonna be really hard to hit my goals this week, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I just know for me, like when I joined the group and everyone's posting their accountability posts every single day, I'm just like, I don't want to be the only one that didn't get their work done. Like I don't want to be like we said in, I don't know if it was a book club or if it was a morning call or what, but like you don't want to be the person that's always like, oh, I didn't do it, and just you want to be like, no, I hit my goal today, like, and celebrate with everybody else. And that was one of like a big motivator for me because yeah.
And I think what's good, well, there's a couple of ways, and we've talked a lot about this in the morning call. I think that spreadsheet that Chris is really focusing on, where you can put your listings each day. It seems like that's really helping a lot of people. Like I've started to add mine in there. And of course I do my daily little clicker shot, which I started at the beginning of the year. And that's also a habit. And even if it's a day where I fail to hit my numbers, I'm still going to take the picture. And I remember early in the year when that would happen more often, it was really hard because I felt I'm like, oh no, people are going to see I didn't hit it. But I don't know. I think just holding yourself or the tools that this group is creating is helping all of us to be accountable. And, Chris was talking about, if maybe people can find accountability partners, if that will help. But the tools are there, and this group is very supportive, going back to your original point, to help us and to encourage and just the ideas. And go back to efficiency real quick. It's not accountability, but like people share their ideas, and not everything's going to work for everybody, but I don't know. It just kind of blows my mind. Like I have a group of reseller friends who aren't in the group, and I've been preaching to them. They're like, "Man, your number." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm learning from Tech and Chris and other people in the group." And one of my friends, who when I started last year, he was selling more. Not that it was a competition, but he was selling more than me. And like yesterday, he was messaging, "Man, are you so slow?" And I heard my little inner Tech. I'm like, dude, you can't look at it day to day, because like the week before he had a great week. I'm like, you got to look at it, not even really month to month, maybe month to month, but really year over year. And I'm like, well, it's Saturday. I was out on the roads. We went camping, and there was so much traffic. People are traveling. I'm like, you can't be so micro focused. So I guess basically it's like your point of like a lot of people that aren't in the group, they'll have questions, and I don't know the most about eBay by any stretch of the imagination, but I've learned so much from Tech and other people that I it's almost like I'm a disciple, or I'm spouting what I think that they would say, and I've come to see that it works. And I don't know. I think everybody should be in the group, but some people, there's a group of people that they will never pay for a paid group. And I'm like, y'all are crazy. Like I remember the very first week I signed up, I got a tip that first week that more than paid for the whole year. It's insane. All right, I'm gonna quit preaching because y'all are already part of the group.
They should know what they want to get out of it, right? Because if they're not going to get anything out of it, it's like, it's fine, don't pay.
Yeah, you got to have the right mindset, and they don't have it. I guess going back to this specific chapter, they're talking about profit accelerator groups. And I guess my approach to this is I'm kind of taking big concepts and the lean approach, and I'm not doing each at least at this point. I may come back and do this before, because I've done something similar with Dave Ramsey, but I think if you are following the program, then to join some of these profit accelerator groups would be good, to get the accountability with the actual what's the term? It's not accounting. I guess it kind of is accounting, but like categorizing your different expense accounts, right, Carlin? Like you got your profit, your operating expense, your tax, and your owner's pay are the four main ones. And
yeah, I actually a couple weeks ago I rearranged I opened a couple new bank accounts, and then I rearranged where payments were going in and out of a couple of them, and just to make it even more efficient. And like, I love the way it is now. So I'm just waiting for money to clear out of like my eBay account, my Poshmark accounts, and then I can kind of distribute it where it needs to go. But just within the last like week or so, like I've already got ahead on bills for next month. All my bills for this month were paid by the 19th, which I don't have a lot, but I'm just part-time, so I don't make a ton of money. But just having that, and then I'm going to set aside some money for inventory, and like just knowing that every dollar has a home basically. And then when that money is in my inventory account, like when I go thrifting, that's what's there and that's what's allocated, and that's it. Like there's no swipe a credit card and deal with it later. And yeah, like I said, if you don't have a tendency to overspend, then, you know, and you're super controlled with your money, and or if you're at the point where, you know, you can't outspend what you're making, then yeah, you don't really need it. But when you're just making like $1,500 or $2,000 a month, and you really need that money to be there, to be where it needs to be when you need it, then Profit First is amazing, because there's no like managing money, just it's so easy, because you're like, oh, I got $1,500, okay, 5% to profit, 15% to taxes, this much to inventory, those are my bills, done. Like, I love it so much.
No, and I'm not bashing it at all. I think it's a good system, and obviously your testimony to how it works. And I think it definitely gives everyone structure. In the last chapter, and then we'll get to Layla here. The last chapter is like advanced techniques, and it looks like these are different like accounts that you would open. Like they're talking about an income account, a vault, a stock account, pass-through account, materials account, subcontractor commission accounts, employee payroll account, major equipment account, drip account, petty cash account, sales tax. And he does mention like, don't even mess with these until you've gone through several quarters and that you're starting to see that income growing. And I want to hear it from Layla. Then I want to talk about the Pareto overlap, and when they kind of talk about the employee formula, which I found interesting. Layla?
So it's actually a question that I have. I don't know. I missed the other. I don't know. Yeah, I missed the other two calls that we had on this book. I did read it. Well, I listened to it. It was an audiobook, so I must have missed it. But I was wondering, where does the inventory, like inventory expense, go?
So there's a book called Profit First for E-commerce Sellers by Cindy Thomason. She wrote the book with Mike, who wrote Profit First. And she says she mostly refers to people who sell on Amazon, like especially Fulfilled by Amazon, FBA. But she basically said that it's just good to have a separate inventory account, because you're buying things so far in advance that you know, if you research her name, I'll type her name in the chat, but she has several talks she talks about like how to manage it, because obviously like you need money for inventory, otherwise you're not going to have sales. But basically she says that whenever you sell an item, you take whatever your cost of goods was for that and you shove it back into your inventory account. But for me, it's just a way to budget, because you know, the whole point of Profit First is that you stay ahead of your bills more or less, instead of, you know, say you put it on a credit card and you're overspending and you're buying more inventory than you can list, or you're just spending more money on, you know, like here, like a lot of stuff is $8 or $9 each. So, you know, $200 didn't go very far. So I would put it on a credit card, and then I'd be like, oh no, I don't have enough money in my account to pay this off. And then I would be like, you know, scrambling, running sales, and just that's the cycle that he doesn't want you in. So if you set a budget and you put that money in a separate account, and I have it linked to my debit card, then when I go thrifting, I see that there's $500 in there or whatever, and like that's my budget, and I can't go over that because I don't have a credit card. So yeah.
Okay.
Did that help, Layla?
So oh no, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just asking if that helped. I think Carlin has the most experience with the principles in the book, but it's basically you're taking, like they call it like different categories, and you're taking a percentage of your total revenue and you're putting that money in different categories. Like you would have a inventory category, and that would help keep you from what is it, like maybe 15%, Carlin?
For inventory?
Yeah, like what is your percentage?
I don't have a
sharing?
percentage right now, because I'm just kind of getting back on the whole thing, because I just spent like a lot of money on that bulk buy. So a lot of my cash went to that. But basically okay, so you have 100%. So it's supposed to be 5% profit, 15% for taxes, and then 50% for owner's pay, and then 30% for your expenses. So out of that 30%, then you have to figure out how much of that you can put towards your inventory. But as your sales grow, it gets bigger. So I'll probably just transfer like an extra, I don't know, like maybe $100 to $500 a month as I grow. And I'll just keep shoving that in there. And then like, say if I sell a dress and it was $9, then when that dress sells, I take that $9, shove it back into the inventory account. But the thing with profit first, like the whole like basis of profit first is that if your expenses are too high, the assumption is that you're eventually going to your sales are going to catch up to your spending. So say you buy like $500 worth of inventory and you expect to make $1,000 on it, but then what if a couple pieces are damaged, like there's a flaw that you missed, or what if it doesn't sell for as much, or what if, like there's all these different things. So if you don't kind of plan for that, then the sales never catch up to your spending, and then you never have the opportunity to pay yourself the amount that you deserve. And that's what he says in the book, where he's like, you have to pay yourself like you're the most important employee. I do think if you're growing, I will asterisk this, I do think if you're growing and you have other income, I don't think you need to do that. But if your goal is to be full-time, like pay yourself like you're the most important employee in the business, and then lower your expenses.
So to kind of give an example, let me just run some numbers and then we'll get Vanessa. So let's just say you brought in $2,000 gross revenue for the month. So if you have 30% towards expenses, that would be $600. Now, when you think about the expenses we have, the biggest one is the inventory, but you could also have like a storage unit. You could have different things. If you use List Perfectly or something, that would come out. So I think it would kind of focus you to be as lean as you could to figure out what are the key items that you really need to use that for. And like as Carlin was saying, as you grow, those numbers would increase. Vanessa, did you want to add on?
Yeah, I think it's I think I mentioned to you, Brian, like when I first started reading this book, I was like, I don't get it. Like, aren't I already doing this kind of thing? And I think one thing that might be different, like with resellers, is like a lot of times we're like the profit that we're making compared to like the cost of goods, we're doubling or sometimes tripling or more. Like some people like 10x their money, right? So, that's very different than a lot of other models where you're only getting, you're not 2xing, you might make, I don't know, you're probably doing really good if you make like 50% on your initial investment, or, a lot of margins are even like way smaller than that. Another thing, I don't think we don't talk a lot necessarily about like budgeting for like cost of good expenses. And I think when you're in a plateau, it's nice, you can kind of like build up that like a nest egg of cash. But I think as you look to like moving up and listing more, kind of like looking at, okay, what's my revenue? How much am I getting in my bank account each week? How much am I gonna be spending on cost of goods each week? If you're in a higher cost of goods category, like it can add up really fast. So, like I do shoes. That's something that when I went into shoes, I was like, wow, this is really adding up a lot faster than my like garage sale $1, $2 fines. So just something to think about.
Yeah, those are good points. Yeah, that the margins, most businesses 10, 20, 30% is good. But like exactly like what you're saying, we could double, triple, 10x our money. And I think Tech, you've talked about this, like eBay's almost like a glitch that you can make so much money, relatively easy compared to starting on these other businesses. And, you know, tech, you know, they had that podcast episode about the plateau that Vanessa referenced, where like when I heard that, it was like, I don't know why I hadn't thought of it. It was just like a light bulb, like an epiphany. It's like, okay, so you don't have to because when you're in growth mode, it's like you're acquiring so much more inventory to grow, that, you know, that your percentage of your revenue can be strained by that. And then if you're hiring employees or VAs or different things, getting more equipment, that can all add up. But if you plateau and hit reseller nirvana, I mean, you're making way more than what you're spending. And as Tech would say, you just kind of stack up that cash for a while and wait for that next move. Or in my case, I'm trying this very gradual, add one a week, assuming I hit the goal for that week. And my thought is, as I grow very slowly over time, like in a year, you know, what am I? I'm at 28 a day right now. So in a year, if I went up one a week for a year, I'd be at 80. And that's a way different, that's a lot more than where I'm at right now. But hopefully the sales will kind of keep up, or close enough to keep up, where I won't feel that pinch of growth, or the growing pains, I guess. And then I'll be able to see like where the problems are, and hopefully the cash flow is right, where I can afford, when I finally need to hire somebody for whatever task that is. And also it'll give me time to truly become an expert. And I was trying to take shortcuts and hire out VAs when I was not an expert in the category. And as I'm going back fixing those old listings, especially when I was using Sellhound and Hammock, they're horrible. And it just wasn't the way to do it. Which I think is the perfect segue. We could talk about any of these advanced techniques, but the kind of the section that caught my eye the most when they were talking about the Pareto overlap, which is the 80-20 rule, which Atomic Habits talked a lot about that. And on page 158, first full paragraph, he says, Pareto's principle also applies to your clients, in that 20% of them yield 80% of your revenue. This is a foundational principle of the growth strategy I detailed in my book, The Pumpkin Plan. And it goes further. 80% of your profit is derived from 20% of the products and or services you offer. And I think this is what Tech was referencing. And you, obviously you can jump in, Tech, but when he was talking about each year he fires his worst customers, I think that fits right into what they're saying. And as resellers, I think when I look at the Pareto rule, it's more of like you're niching down, like what are you selling? If you're an everything store, maybe you spend some time and you kind of look at, well, is there 20% of the things that I'm selling that's producing 80% or a majority of my profits? Is it shoes? Is it electronics, or whatever it is? And then slowly start to, I don't know if slowly is the right word, but get rid of those other items and just focus on those profitable items, because that's, and then going back to Atomic Habits, because he says you take the 80-20 rule and you go through like two more steps. You go like 80-20, then you narrow it down to 90-10, and then eventually it's your one thing. That one thing that you need to work on is derived from Pareto's law, that 80-20 rule. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot there. And then the next section, and we talk a lot, and I guess Isaiah's not here. I'm sure he'll be jumping in on this one, talking about the employee formula. And on page 159, he says, there's a really simple formula for determining if you can afford a new hire, or if your business is currently understaffed or overstaffed. For each full-time employee, your company should generate real revenue of $150,000 to $250,000, ideally more, but this is the minimum. So if you want $1 million company, you know that you can afford 4 to 6 employees, including yourself. This is just a ballpark number, every business is unique, but do not use your super distinctive status as an excuse to hire more people. Then he talks about efficiency, and he does make a distinction between cheap labor and more skilled labor. And like cheap labor would be the person making the fries at McDonald's, while more skilled labor would probably be like an IT position. And those percentages, like if it's cheap labor, they should generate 4 times the revenue than their cost. And if it's more skilled labor, it's only 2.5 times. And obviously, I don't have any employees. I know Tech does, and he does mention each business is different. But I think that's kind of interesting. I don't know if anybody read that or had any thoughts about the return on revenue that an employee should have, not to mention when you should make that first hire and what it should be as in our niche. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that.
I had a thought about the previous one, just with like cash flow. I think it's so important that like you don't, what was it again? The one that you said before, you're talking about employees.
The Pareto's law?
Oh yeah. So the because like it's so easy to just get so much cash tied up in random stuff that either you're not listing or isn't selling for you because your customers are looking for a certain specific item and or a specific style. And then if you have like some random, like I don't sell band tees because I know that that's not my customer. So like if I start listing band tees, I may sell them, I may not. So you have to really make sure that you know what your niches are, and that you're not just like tying up cash buying random stuff. And yeah, I guess that was my whole point. Because at the beginning, like I just wasted so much money on random stuff like that I never listed, and I just donated back because I'm like, I don't want to list hats. I don't want to list like I bought like purses I didn't list. I don't know. I don't even want to know how much money I wasted. But as I got like more experience, now I don't mind spending $9 on an item because I know that it's gonna sell for me and no problem at all. But at the beginning, yeah, no, I shouldn't have been spending the amount of money that I was.
Yeah, and I think at the beginning when you're a generalist, like it's okay. Like you've got to figure out what is your niche or what are your niches. And the only way to know is to buy those things that you don't want to list, or that I went through a glass phase and like messed around with antiques and stuff, and oh my gosh, I would not want to do that now. Just they're slow moving and the packaging and the shipping is horrible. But with that being said, if that's what your whole business was and you became a true expert in it, and like what Ken was talking about, how you could go into a thrift store, if you really knew that niche, plates and glasses, because I've sold some of that stuff, for really good money, and that's all that was your main thing, your one thing, then it would be you could create systems where it'd be very profitable. But you got to figure out what it is that you truly like to do. And I think the more squirrel brain you have, the harder it can be. But like for me now, it's weird. Like I have these debates with some people, like there's freedom and the simplicity of just listing the same things. And I have brain power left at the end of the day. Like when I was an everything seller, I was exhausted by the end of a full day of listing. We can use our brain power on other things if we niche down. And or I don't know if Ed's here, but like Ed always talks about, make sure you spend time working on the business and not just in the business. And I think like how Tech was talking about that idea of flipping the people through the station, that's an example of working on the business. Like we need to set some time to think about these improvements that'll yield big results. All right, anybody got anything else? I see Vanessa's about to go. Anybody got any final thoughts? Next week we will finish the book, chapters 10, 11, and 12. All right, then. Well, thanks for everyone for dropping by. I appreciate the conversation. Hopefully we can pick at least something from this to try to implement or at least think about. And we'll see y'all on the next call. Everybody have a good night.
All right, you too, man.